Hello, my name is Ian. I'm usually the camera guy for Gary, filming all the antics in his garden, so you'll know it's like the last video where we filled his cabin full of smoke. Now, in the introduction to that, there was some upright sleepers with LED profiles on, and today actually we're going to look at installing a timber post with an LED profile. Now, I have a garden that's kind of got a tropical vibe, modern landscape, so I already use quite a lot of LED profiles. That's what's inspired this video. Interestingly, we're going to be using Maxrete concrete, which is a concrete that's 50% lighter than typical concrete products because it uses lightweight aggregates. I've not used it before, and that's why it'll be quite interesting to see how it compares, how it works out. So let's check it out and see how I got on. In typical Blue Peter style, I've already dug a hole. I've used what I believe is called a chisel digger, which is the black steel tool with the sharper end, and then I've used a conventional post hole digger in combination. Being the British summertime, it's already half full with water. We're going to put the post in next and get on with it. As you can see, I've tied the post with a cable tie to a ladder just because I'm working alone, and this allows me to keep it straight while I get on and do this and film it at the same time. I like to use post savers on the bottom of my posts. I think these are quite cool. It's an inner layer of bitumen, and then on the outside it's plastic that allows expansion of the wood while still keeping it protected from water. With tannalised timber, if it's in the ground, you might still be lucky to get 10 years, and this is supposed to take the lifespan to 20 years. So, you know, for a couple of quid, whatever it costs, I think it's worth the extra money. Now, it's time for a quick montage. Now, it's worth noting that I'm going to be pouring the mix in, by eye. I'm guessing where half a bag is, so I'm hoping I get it more or less spot on. I didn't know what to expect with the Maxrete, having not used it before. You can see the tiny aggregate in the finish, which I'm fine with. I went to check the bag and I found that I had in fact used over half. Not much over, there was enough left to do another post. But it would have been nice if I could get it bang on 10 kilograms. So if there was a line on the bag or something that said this is exactly halfway rather than having to guess it. That said, after 20 minutes, it was still in place. I was able to remove the ladder. I checked it at 12 hours and 24 hours. You know, it was fully set at 24 hours. There was no budging it, so it's done the job. So let's get on with putting on the LED profile. The first task is to cut the profile down to length. So I'll mark it up against the exact size of the post, but then I'll cut it a couple of centimetres shorter to allow the LED cable to come out of the bottom. For safety's sake, I then sand down the profile and I'll paint it the same colour to prevent corrosion. If the finish on the inside of the profile isn't that consistent, I will also add an additional coat of paint. It's not essential to do this, but I just do it out of peace of mind. The next step is to prepare the diffuser. So you can either measure the length of the profile, take 2mm off that to accommodate the end caps, or you can actually put the diffuser in and mark it yourself with a Stanley knife. Again, just taking account of any end caps that you need to add. I've marked it here with a Stanley knife on the front and on the sides and bent it back to get a clean cut. Keep in mind that if your profile isn't at least 1 centimetre deep, even with the diffuser, you might not see a single beam of light. You might still be able to see the individual LEDs. I'm not going to cover too much on LEDs because it's quite an involved topic. For example, you've got individual addressable LEDs, you've got enhanced IP rated LEDs, you've got ones that are dual strips, you've got your new RGB W and WW standards. I'm just going for plain RGB. I'm going for 24 volt and I'm going for high density strips, which means you've got more packed in per meter, so you get a nice consistent light. So it's nothing too fancy, but we're going to connect it to a Wi-Fi controller so it can be controlled with Alexa and so on. You can do special effects and have various colours around the garden, but it's not going to be full on nightclub. There's two ways you can go about installing an LED profile. You can use metal clips as you see here, which is very convenient, or you can drill through the profile itself and screw it on. Now I prefer the latter for the clean look. Note here that I'm pre-drilling the hole so the wood doesn't split. I'm going to drill 2 holes through the profile so that I can fasten it directly against the timber. One hole will be at the top and one will be towards the bottom, but I'll be leaving enough space so that I'm not going towards the base of the wood where the post saver is. Once I've drilled the holes, I'm then going to put a bit of silicone on there as well, both to protect the metal because I'm drilling through it and to protect the screw head. I've placed the profile flush against the end of the timber and screwed it in top and bottom, and then I'm going to place the top end cap on. To fasten on the LED strip, you remove the adhesive backing. This is where you'll find the adhesive often isn't that great, and sometimes you can see the metal pins. That's one of the reasons why I like to paint the LED profiles if the coverage isn't good. It's just that worry about will there ever be a short. Now for the easy part, you simply press the LED strip against the profile. For the bottom end cap where the cable comes out, I actually cut the hole a little bit larger so that I can get the whole cable through, and then I put in silicone around the hole so that when I push it against the cable, it's going to seal around the edges. On some strips you can pull the connectors back, revealing the back of the pins. If this is the case, I put some silicone on those too. I'm not convinced that the connectors on LED strips are really robust enough for the outdoor environment, so for my own peace of mind I use silicone and then some heat shrink to actually connect two connectors together and aim to prevent water ingress. Although you can leave the wire as is, after all it is only DC voltage, I will tend to use a protective conduit if there's an area that I feel is more vulnerable, for example where it might be walked across or where there's potential that a fox might have a go at chewing it. If you find you have to connect two LED extensions together, then I take the same approach as I do to a strip. I use silicone and then heat shrink, and then I use a heat gun to shrink that down, or you can get away with a hairdryer. I'll secure any conduit that could be potentially tripped over, and if the look of the finish bugs me a little, then I'll creatively use landscaping to hide the wiring. In my case, I have 24 volt feeding the border of my garden, so I've tapped into that with an IP rated box, so we have 24 volt going into the Wi-Fi controller. That is then controlling 3 LED strips via the terminal block, so you can cut the head off the LED extensions and just wire them directly together like this to save space. You can ignore the blue gel, that's just an additional waterproofing protection. So let's check out the end result.